Well, climate change, we understand and we all know, is such an incredibly important issue to discuss. But perhaps let's bring in a different angle. Climate change is actually going to make the world sicker, hungrier, poorer, gloomier, and more worryingly, more dangerous in the next 18 years. That's according to the latest United Nations science report. Let's find out how this report got to these conclusions. Always great to have with us Francois Engelbrecht from Global Change Institute this morning. Francois, good morning. Always appreciate your time. So when you read this, it's sad to say, but I think we all knew it would eventually get to this point. But just how shocked were you by what the report said?
Morning, Gareth. Thanks for having me. Yes, I think we can call this report, I think the name that it's going to get in the general media is that your house is on fire report. So the findings of the report are not surprising, but they are still alarming. Climate change impacts are becoming more severe across the world. They are occurring across more widespread regions. They are more disruptive than any before. Than ever before, and I don't think we have to look any further than our own country to just see examples of climate change impacting on our daily lives already. We've seen so many examples over the last several years, and this is indeed the case globally. And the report then, of course, continues to make projections of how these impacts will become even more severe over the next 2 decades. Particularly for the case where we will remain mainly reliant on fossil fuels as our main energy source on the planet.
And we've been saying this for so long, though, haven't we, Prof, that we're going to get to a point where, like how you say it, the house is on fire report. But it's as though you and I could sit here for the next 2 decades talking about this, but I just never feel like we actually have a discussion about how something is positively changing. That was very badly phrased. How something is changing in a positive manner. It's always, it's doomsday, it's coming, we know how bad it's going to get, and we don't do anything about it. Or am I still being too pessimistic?
No, unfortunately, you are being realistic. Climate science has been warning for a very long time that we should do everything that we can to restrict global warming to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is really thought to be the first major threshold at which certain aspects of climate change will become irreversible and also far more dangerous. Now, we are now currently sitting, as we are having this discussion today, at about 1.1 degrees Celsius of global warming. Of course, the warming here in our region has been far stronger than that, but that's the global average recorded up until today. Now, the IPCC in the 6th assessment report also made the assessment that it is now more likely than not that the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold of global warming will be exceeded. So we've delayed the climate change mitigation process for too long. And it's probably already too late, even if we do everything that's right now over the next 10 years, we are probably going to exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold in the 2030s, early 2030s. Now that brings a range of more severe impacts to many parts of the world, including to Southern Africa.
Prof, I can't help but think, let's imagine we and you and I and everyone watching eNCA has transported themselves magically 10 years, 18 years into the future. I always get the sense when we're talking about environmental issues, there's no urgency, because it's always another decade away. It's always one more degree that it's getting warmer. How different do you think as a species humans would react to global warming if you and I sat here and said this was breaking news that there's going to be a catastrophe tomorrow in South Africa? We would have a very different reaction, wouldn't we? But it's like we don't care because it's too far away to worry about.
Yeah, that's a difficult predicament we're in. Let me first point out that we are, of course, already feeling more and more severe impacts of climate change in our own region. Examples that all the viewers will know about are, of course, the Cape Town Day Zero drought, 2015 to 17. That type of drought is already far more likely to recur because of ongoing climate change. And just remember the massive drought of 2015-16, the El Niño drought. Botswana lost 40% of its cattle during that drought. And just think about Tropical Cyclone Idai, March 2019. more than 1,000 people died in Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. So severe events are already impacting. That's already enough reason for us to take action. But I do think that over the next 10 to 20 years, the impacts of extreme events, and this report also states this very clearly, will become so severe and will have such major impacts on economic growth that the nations of the world will be forced to take action. So it's very difficult to think that we will continue purely on this fossil fuel road, because economies will be severely affected increasingly over the next 10 to 20 years, and it will be to some extent too late to avoid some of the most dangerous impacts, but I think at least it will increasingly result in climate action. And you know, every bit of global warming we can avoid, even if it is with delayed action over the next 10 to 20 years, can still avoid further increases in the severity of extreme weather.
It really can. I think you make such a good point as I say goodbye to you as well. Once it starts hurting economically, we're all going to have a very different view on this. Once it starts hitting the bottom line and budgets and country budgets and the fiscus. Professor, thank you as always for your time. Professor Francois Engelbrecht, Global Change Institute. Go read this report. It's the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's not far away. Climate change is not far away.